Hello，看特斯拉，说什么？来看 SpaceX 地上首个财报啊，待会应该是还有10分钟左右吧，然后估计在这里开播。你们想进去听的话，可以在 Space 的这一个页面，就是 Investor Relation 这一个页面去找这个 Webcast，是要注册用邮箱注册一下的。然后这边的话，结果已经出来了，在收拾之后马上就给出来了。总体来说应该是个很明显的低价，不过这个可能是因为今天那个整体白天的涨幅是，就是说，收市的这个涨幅还是涨到了10%，然后上面的话比市之后好像是下跌的过程。但我看这个财报结果还是比较不错的，比我想象的要好。那么我也做了一个前瞻，是大概做过了。看一下基本上数字都是 beat 的，尤其我们看一些比较基本的重点。第二季度的话，那营收是7.8 billion 78亿，78亿，你们可以看一下那个华尔街的一个总预期应该是华尔街的平均预期的话，应该是只有6.8 billion， 也就是68亿。这次给出来结果的话，是一个billion 10亿的一个 beta。刚才还挺多的。其实我之前的那个分析里面说了，可能是估少的，但我也没有想到估少这么多。其中最明显的一块的话是 AI 那一块，AI 那一块的话是它这边给出来的，就包括算力频租在内的一个算力基础设施的一个收入嘛，应该是21。这里，那么它 AI 这边一个 AI solution 这一块，应该就是它的算力频租相关的。那这里给到的是2.1 billion， 这个因为前面也有400多，所以它这个是不光是算力频租的，还有一些其他东西。所以光算力频租这一块的话，应该是这里的主要构成，也就是算力频租大概是拿到了大概17亿左右，17亿左右的一个数量级。这个的话比我自己估的还好，其实可能受到华尔街影响的。我自己原来就估的是一个13亿到17亿啊，也就是我原本估算的最好那一头。我因为华尔街那边在估算，所以我自己重新算了一遍，说法又算得更加保守了。那么，华尔街是把这一块算到13亿左右，我这边算14亿中位数了。其实我最高我是给到17亿的，本来还是受影响。你的收入的话，其实比华尔街要预期要高出了非常多，10亿。总的一个盈亏的话，当然也没有转亏为盈啊，就多出了1个亿的1个 billion 的一个收入，但是它的一个看一下，它的盈亏的话还是一个1亿多的一个亏损，就是1亿，总的盈亏是1个亿，对，1.4亿的一个亏损。比华尔街预期的要好很多，华尔街预期的话是一个0.8到1个 billion 左右，也就是10亿左右的一个，本来预计的是10亿左右的亏损，那么这边的话只有1.4亿的亏损，那么尤其是相比第一季项目的话，是一个对吧？是从19亿亏损到1亿左右，1.4亿的亏损，1.4亿的亏损，这个确实是收缩很多了。这个我在我自己分析里面也提过，这个到比预计的好，但也没有转亏为盈。第3季度的话估计就可以了。按每个部门去看的话，应该也是都比预想的要多了一点。那么就发射这边的话，就太空部门它的总营收的话是9.6亿嘛，第一季度的话是61.2亿啊。这个的话其实是比华尔街预计要高一点，华尔街预计的话应该是一个8点几亿吧。华尔街预计是8.3亿，这里的话可能还是一个单价比较高吧，因为第二季度的商业发射数量比较多吧，商业发射数量的话应该是9次14嘛，那我还漏算了一次，那 internal launch 的话就指的是新内业务。我少算一次，怪不得。那么第一季度的话7次，那第二季度10次，而且的话单价其实比第一季度要高，有一些就订单和一次重点任务嘛，订单可能有2次哈。
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for SpaceX's second quarter 2026 earnings conference call. I'm Andrea Williams, Head of Investor Relations. Joining me today are Elon, Gwen, and Brett, and we are speaking to you from our facility in Bastrop, Texas. Our second quarter financial results were announced just after 3 p.m. Central Time, and all relevant materials have been published to our investor relations website at ir.spacex.com. For this webcast, our prepared remarks will be followed by a question and answer session. We will take live Q&A from equity analysts and then move to questions directly from our investors that were polled on our dedicated earnings Q&A platform. Thank you to everyone who submitted your questions in advance. During this webcast, we will discuss our business outlook and make forward-looking statements. These statements are based on our predictions and expectations as of today. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC, including our final prospectus and today's published Form 10-Q. Additionally, during this call, we may discuss certain non-GAAP measures. In our press release and our filings with the SEC, you can find additional disclosures, including all reconciliations with comparable GAAP measures. For the second quarter of 2026, we announced the following financial results as compared to the prior year quarter. Revenues of $7.8 billion, up 92% from $4.1 billion. A quarterly net loss of $541 million. An improvement of $467 million. An adjusted EBITDA of $3.5 billion, up 191% from $1.2 billion. Now I will hand the call over to Elon for his opening remarks.
Thank you. So it's been another milestone year. Thank you. So it's been another milestone year for SpaceX so far. We're making great progress developing a fully and rapidly reusable, reliable rocket with Starship. We're connecting millions more people globally across 170 markets with fast, reliable Starlink internet. We're building AI compute capacity at scale faster than anyone else, we believe. And we're significantly improving our AI models, most notably with the release of Grok 4.5 last month. And now I'll dive into each of those topics separately. So with Starship, we completed 2 successful flights of Starship V3 in the past 90 days. Flight 13 demonstrated core capabilities necessary to achieve an orbital mission and return to Starbase for catch. And on Flight 14 will be our first flight to fly our version 3 Starlink satellites, our communication satellites, to operational orbit. We will try to actually catch the first and the second stage of Starlink V3 this year, and we could possibly catch the ship as soon as the next flight. It's difficult to actually explain to most people just the incredible significance of Starship. And I think perhaps describing it in terms of tonnage to orbit is a good way to appreciate the magnitude of the impact Starship will have on the future of civilization. So right now, we deliver roughly 2,500 tons a year to orbit via Falcon. And this is a big number by normal standards. The rest of the world, I think, delivers around 300 tons. So we deliver 80 to 90% of total Earth mass to orbit per year with Falcon. Now with Starship, our aspirations, and I think we will achieve these aspirations, are to deliver well over 1 million tons to orbit per year, and probably ultimately 10 million tons per year. So this is not like if you had a chart where you plotted things, you would need a very, very big table to put the chart on to see, to even see any of our competitors on that chart, and to make that. So our next biggest competitor was 1 pixel high on the bar chart. You would still need a very big bar chart to represent the SpaceX Starship vehicle. And it's worth noting that we actually encourage our competitors to copy us. We do nothing to slow them down. We actually launch competing satellite constellations at fair prices, the same price we charge everyone. So we do encourage our competitors to copy us, but it's quite difficult to copy something like Starship. But we don't use patents as sort of a landmine exercise to stop people from copying us. We actively encourage it. So, anyways, but when you think about it on that, so we go from 2,500 tons a year to, 1 million, potentially 10 million tons per year. It's really a ridiculously profound difference. But that is our plan, and I think we will achieve that plan. Regarding Starlink, it's also worth just noting that the Starlink V3 satellite is about an order of magnitude more capable than the Starlink V2 satellite, which was already a very capable satellite. And we expect to launch about an order of magnitude more Starlink V3 satellites. So that would mean a roughly 2 order of magnitude increase in the delivered bandwidth. Even if our monetization per bit dropped by a factor of 10, that would still mean a 10x increase in the revenue of Starlink. So I think people are really underestimating Starlink here. So this is a big deal. It's kind of hard for people to wrap their minds around this, but it's not out of the question that at some point Starlink will deliver a majority of the world's internet, at least in countries where we're allowed to operate, which is the vast majority of countries. So this is important to bear in mind, and it's not in like the infinity future. It's less than 10 years. With the advent of AI and humanoid robotics and vehicle robotics and just a massive number of robots, the appetite for bandwidth will be much greater than it has been in the past. If you think of a human consuming perhaps or producing perhaps about a few hundred bits per second of output, and actually the average human is outputting less than 1 bit per second over the course of a day, which is 86,400 seconds. Now, computers, could easily do billions of bits per second continuously over a 24-hour period. So this is why I would expect the appetite for bandwidth to grow dramatically with the growth of AI and robotics. And really, I think Starlink is the only thing that can actually service that bandwidth. Regarding AI, we're making rapid progress on Grok, because Grok 4.5 was a huge improvement. And we have Grok 4.6 coming out probably next week. And then Grok 4.7 is about 3 or 4 weeks from today. And we expect the cadence of AI development to improve dramatically. And then with Grok 5, which should be out before the end of this year, we will be incorporating the entire corpus of SpaceX data, basically all the data that SpaceX has ever produced, which is a tremendous amount over the course of a quarter century, will be incorporated into Grok training. And we think this will make Grok by far the best engineer. So these are all like very, very big things. In addition, of course, we are providing compute to others, and we are building and deploying compute, I think faster, or our rate of growth certainly is faster than anyone else. And our efficiency of compute deployment, I think, is also the highest. So we expect to end this year with over 2 gigawatts of compute. And probably our cumulative compute online by the end of next year will be several times higher. So it may, let's say, be closer to 10 gigawatts of compute than 5 gigawatts of compute. That's a way to think about it. And going forward, we've decided to build exclusively on NVIDIA because we think the the Vera Rubin architecture is the best architecture. We think it's the best AI computer, and we greatly value our close cooperation and partnership on many levels with NVIDIA. So we're exclusive to NVIDIA. And this new capacity coming online will obviously further benefit the development of Grok, as will our Cursor acquisition, which should close quite soon. I think we're through almost all of the regulatory hurdles. And then with respect to the StarMind AI satellite, which will be essentially an optimized Vera Rubin NVL72 computer. This is not some sort of far future distant thing. We expect to start launching these next year, and we think the design of the NVL72 VR computer is a much better design than is typical, than say having a standard rack style design, and so we expect to actually deploy this on the ground as well as in orbit, because we think it's going to be a radical simplification of the normal NVL72 rack. It will cost less. It'll be more effective. And so if we're going to put it in space, why not put it on the ground? So I think that's going to be pretty cool. In conclusion, the SpaceX team is solving some of the hardest engineering problems in the history of humanity. And I think the team is succeeding because I think we've got, in a lot of ways, the smartest, most dedicated team of humans that has ever existed. I'm incredibly proud to work with such a team, and I'd like to thank the team for their incredible hard work. And also thank you to investors who have supported us along the way.
Thanks, Elon. We had an exceptional second quarter, and today I'll focus on the operational and commercial highlights, as well as the initiatives we are prioritized going forward. Starting with our space business, we remain the leading launch provider globally, with 78 total launches and 1,041 tons of mass to orbit delivered in the first half of this year, primarily allocated to our own internal Starlink missions, but with great customer missions as well. While our launch capabilities are key to supporting our connectivity business, we continue to have a very robust commercial manifest and a very robust and growing U.S. government mission demand, which drives revenue for the segment. We're currently launching at our highest Falcon cadence and are on the precipice of operationalizing Starship. As Elon said, the first two flights of our V3 Starship vehicles put us in an excellent position to achieve our near-term goals of reaching orbit, catching and reusing the ships and boosters, and deploying our V3 Starlink broadband satellites. Speaking of which, Starlink had a standout quarter driven by continued growth across our consumer, enterprise, and government businesses. During the second quarter, we added net more than 1.7 million Starlink subscribers globally, consumer. This reflects our best quarter of new customers to date, an increase from the 1.4 million we added during the first quarter. We achieved this by holding ARPU, which is the average revenue per user, stable at $66 per month compared to the first quarter. We ended the second quarter with service availability in 167 markets and have continued to activate new markets since then, with some very exciting announcements coming soon, maybe even as early as today. As of June 30th, our constellation of operational Starlink, broadband, and mobile satellites in orbit grew to roughly 10,200, with our 9,600 broadband satellites delivering roughly 800 terabits per second of total downlink capacity. Following a successful speed run test of the V3 Starlink satellites on the most recent Starship launch, during which we connected every satellite through every laser link, We intend to deploy V3 satellites into the constellation for operational use on the upcoming Starship missions. The significant amount of capacity we're able to add to the Starlink constellation from the V3 satellites will enable us to continue providing even better service. I think it's pretty great already, but to do so while serving more and more customers over the world. In fact, in the years ahead, we expect Starlink will represent a significant portion of global internet traffic, which Elon also talked about. We also see significant growth opportunities for Starlink in enterprise and government, on the enterprise and government side of the business. We believe revenue from these markets have the potential to reach a scale at least comparable, but likely exceed our consumer business as we continue to gain share. In the second quarter, we signed a major agreement with American Airlines, as well as activated our service with new partners, including Southwest, Virgin Atlantic, Iberia, and Aer Lingus. We have become the provider of choice among major airlines with outstanding customer feedback, but still have significant room for growth. In fact, we heard from one of our airline customers, shockingly, customers are flying shorter hop flights instead of direct, so that they could ensure that they're on a Starlink activated flight. They'd never seen this in the business before. On the government side, we won more than $6 billion in U.S. contracts in Q2, supporting major Space Force programs that offer our nation mission-critical communications and sensing capabilities, and we see even more room for growth in this sector in this coming year. In Q2, we also launched the new Starlink mobile partnerships with international carriers, including SoftBank, NTT Docomo, and Spark New Zealand. Our near-term priority is launching mobile V2 satellites on Starship ahead of integrating the 65 megahertz of EchoStar spectrum later next year. This spectrum transfer was recently approved by the FCC and represents a foundational competitive advantage for Starlink Mobile. In AI, the industry is hurtling towards ever more compute demands. We're rapidly expanding our compute capacity to meet our own needs as Grok expands, as well as those for other leading companies such as Google and Anthropic. In terms of our own Grok models, the enterprise feedback on rollout of Grok 4.5 has been very positive so far. Token consumption tripled out of the gate after the July release, and we continue to see strong signals on usage and monetization for the model. We're looking forward to welcoming the Cursor team to SpaceX to integrate our engineering and begin to benefit from a combined sales capability. In review, our momentum as a business is extraordinary. Our engineering teams are scaling Starship and our next-gen satellites, while our sales teams expand Starlink, aviation, mobility, and global markets. At the same time, we're bringing on additional compute capacity and expanding and deepening our AI partnerships across a broader set of customers. And though I've been in this business for 24 years, I could not be more excited about the months ahead with all the exciting and amazing things going on. It really feels like we're just getting started all over again. Now I'll turn the call over to Brett.
Thank you, Gwen. We demonstrated strong results in Q2. Revenue growth accelerated across every segment. We narrowed our net losses by nearly half, and on a year-over-year basis, and we grew adjusted EBITDA meaningfully faster than revenue. Importantly, we significantly strengthened the balance sheet through our IPO and inaugural investment-grade bond offering. The combination of our global launch leadership, recurring Starlink revenue, and rapid growth in AI infrastructure continues to drive improved operating leverage. Now I'll walk through the financials for each segment. For the space segment, revenue grew 55% sequentially and 29% year over year to $962 million, driven by a higher number of larger customer launches and a favorable customer mix. Segment costs and expenses rose $389 million year over year, and we continued to accelerate R&D investments in our Starship program. Starship aims to quadruple payload capacity and reduce launch costs by 10 times compared to our Falcon 9 rocket, unlocking significant capabilities across all of our business segments. We continue to make progress building the infrastructure required to support thousands of Starship launches per year, including accelerating Raptor and launch vehicle production, the build-out of our gigabays, and making significant progress towards activating multiple launch pads at Starbase and in Cape Canaveral at Pad 39A and Pad 37. Space adjusted EBITDA was a loss of $205 million for the quarter, primarily reflecting these higher R&D expenses. Moving to the connectivity segment, revenue was up in the connectivity segment was up to $4.3 billion, up 32% sequentially and 66% year over year. Growth was driven by record net additions of Starlink subscribers and a sharp increase in enterprise and government revenue. Starlink subscriber ARPU was $66, unchanged compared to Q1. As we continue our global expansion, we're taking a localized go-to-market approach that ensures our product and service offerings fit local needs. While our geographic expansion may drive down blended ARPU over time, we anticipate continued subscriber momentum to deliver strong revenue growth. Enterprise and government revenue grew 108% year over year and represents a durable source of revenue, contributing to strong segment margins overall. As Gwen mentioned, we see enormous opportunity for growth in this segment, as we remain, for example, less than 10% penetrated in one of the largest segments being aviation. Total costs and expenses for the connectivity segment increased $970 million, or approximately 58% year over year. The increase was driven by higher spend to support our revenue growth, including growth in our satellite constellation, increased R&D investment for our next-gen version 3 satellites, and incremental marketing spend. As Elon mentioned, our version 3 satellites are expected to deliver 10 times the amount of broadband capacity and data density from our current generations, which I think we believe are already pretty amazing, and which are essential to supporting continued subscriber growth and higher value service tiers. Income from operations from the connectivity segment increased 79% year over year to $1.7 billion, outpacing revenue growth and driving nearly 3 points of operating margin expansion. Connectivity segment adjusted EBITDA rose 64% year over year to $2.6 billion. AI segment revenue was $2.6 billion, up 213% sequentially and 247% year over year. The increase was driven primarily by new cloud services agreements, as well as growth in Grok and X subscription revenue. Advertising revenue grew 7% sequentially as we overhauled our advertising platform technology to enable AI functionality and enhance self-service for all customer types. In Q2, we entered into cloud services agreements providing access to compute capacity at our Colossus and Colossus 2 sites. The initial ramp from these agreements contributed $1.6 billion of incremental AI infrastructure revenue in the quarter. Total costs and expenses for the AI segment rose $1.6 billion year over year, reflecting increased R&D, primarily due to higher infrastructure spend as we accelerated compute deployment. We meaningfully narrowed our AI segment net operating loss to $1.3 billion and turned adjusted EBITDA positive for the segment in the second quarter at $1.1 billion. The incremental revenue from new hosting deals generated high incremental EBITDA margins as we monetized available compute capacity. We ended the second quarter with 1.4 gigawatts of nameplate compute, up from 1 gigawatt in Q1 and 400 megawatts a year earlier. We expect to end this year at over 2 gigawatts of compute capacity. Total company capital expenditures in the second quarter were approximately $18.4 billion, of which roughly $15.8 billion supported AI compute infrastructure. The remainder funded ongoing Starship and launch infrastructure, satellite production, and global ground station expansion. Additionally, we paid out $856 million during the quarter under our spectrum credit agreement related to our pending EchoStar transaction. Our capital allocation priorities remain clear and disciplined. We plan to continue to invest aggressively in the 3 areas we believe generate the highest long-term returns: Starship development and production scale, next-generation Starlink broadband and mobile constellations,
and AI compute infrastructure. Across all three of these investments, we remain focused on capital efficiency, return on investment, and preservation of a strong investment-grade balance sheet. The second quarter was transformative from a capital markets perspective. We completed our initial public offering, raising approximately $85.7 billion in net proceeds, and followed that with a $25 billion inaugural investment-grade senior notes offering that was partially used to repay our $20 billion bridge loan. The senior notes were issued across 5 tranches with a weighted average interest rate of 5.855% and average maturity of 11.7 years. We ended the quarter with $100 billion of cash equivalents, and marketable securities, and $47.5 billion in backlog. Looking ahead, we continue to see robust demand in all 3 of our business segments, but in particular in our cloud services arrangements. We see increasingly favorable economics with each agreement we sign, and as Elon mentioned, we expect the supply-demand imbalance in the compute market to continue. The current economics have translated into a less than 1-year payback on our new capital deployments for compute. For example, in the first few weeks of the third quarter, we've already contracted an additional $6.7 billion of cloud services revenue over a 6-month period that begins ramping starting in October of this year. We believe this puts us on a trajectory, including contribution from Cursor, to reach $100 billion of ARR, or annualized revenue run rate, by the end of this year, based on our expected revenue in the month of December of this year. With that, I'll turn the call back to Andrea.
Thank you, Elon, Gwen, and Brett. This concludes our prepared remarks. For today's Q&A session, we will take our first questions from the equity analysts. Please press *1 to join the question queue, and also please limit yourself to 1 question. Operator, please proceed with the queue.
We will now begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1 to raise your hand. To withdraw your question, press *1 again. We ask that you pick up your handset when asking a question to allow for optimum sound quality. If you are muted locally, please remember to unmute your device. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Your first question
from the line of Eric Sheridan with Goldman Sachs. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thanks so much for taking the question, and thanks for all the details in the prepared remarks. Maybe just one on the connectivity segment. Can you discuss the backlog of enterprise and government contracts in that segment of the business, and how we think about that backlog converting into revenue, and what that might mean for the pace and cadence of growth in the next couple of years? Thanks so much.
We are quite bullish on our enterprise activities. I mentioned alone that we received from the government over $6 billion in contracts. Those are you can look at those as tranches and beginnings of additional capability that we will bring online. Some of which we will have to compete, but fundamentally we have the contracts in place to fulfill many phenomenologies, both the ones we've recently announced, as well as additional ones that we'll be working on going forward. Enterprise revenue is quite sticky. We have never lost an enterprise customer. They're quite happy with the Starlink capability that we have right now. Brett mentioned we are only 10% penetrated in the aviation industry, which definitely represents a lot of headroom for revenue going forward. Maritime, I think, is Starlink opens up the TAM dramatically. Starlink offers the capability that ships that don't really have much connectivity right now because they can't afford VSATs, we can basically outfit those ships with Starlink Maritime. So I'm quite bullish on enterprise, very bullish on government, and quite happy with the stickiness that we've seen in those markets.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate a little bit on that, which is that obviously in order to secure a large amount of enterprise revenue, you have to demonstrate and very high reliability, very high uptime. And in the early days, Starlink did not have high uptime. And there's a lot of enterprise customers, most enterprise customers, I'd say, that still have that maybe early Starlink experience where it was a little patchy. So we actually we're building up a large enterprise sales team just to go out there, meet with enterprise, basically corporate and government customers, show them the incredible uptime and low latency of the Starlink system today, so they realize that they can actually treat Starlink as a primary provider, not sort of as a backup provider. This requires just going out there, talking to people, educating them about the current state of the Starlink system and where it's going. And I would expect enterprise revenue to substantially exceed consumer revenue.
Next question, operator.
Your next question comes from the line of Adam Jonas with Morgan Stanley. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Elon, first one for you. Just confirming, you said you expect to be closer to 10 gigawatts of nameplate compute by end of 27, closer to 10 than 5. Do you have line of sight, or how confident is your line of sight on permitting, chips, and turbines for that? And then I have a follow-up for Gwen. Thanks.
So we're actually aiming to far exceed that gigawatt number in terms of power online, power cooling, and electrical equipment. So our tentative target is to actually have 20 gigawatts at the power and cooling level online by the end of next year. Now, I don't think we're going to achieve 20 gigawatts, but we want to have a series of projects that cumulatively come to 20 gigawatts by the end of next year. Some of them won't pan out exactly on time, but I would expect that we'd still probably have at the power plant level something close to 15 gigawatts. So assuming that maybe a quarter of the projects take longer than expected. So our goal is to have far more power, cooling, and electrical equipment than we have GPUs. That's like the logical thing to do given the relative expense of GPUs versus balance of system. SpaceX as a company is incredibly good at hardware. In fact, I'd say probably outside of China, SpaceX and Tesla are the two best companies on Earth at hardware. And I think perhaps even including China. So we're taking a small amount of the expertise that we use for rockets and satellites and applying that to scaling terrestrial data centers. And we're finding that even a small amount of what we've learned building rockets, which are incredibly difficult, applied to data centers yields tremendous benefits. So yeah, we expect to have far in excess of the power and cooling that's needed. And then our understanding with NVIDIA is that we will receive a very significant percentage of their GPUs next year.
Okay. Thanks, Elon. Just Gwen, just a follow-up. You were recently asked what is one of the more underappreciated parts of the SpaceX investment story, and you said robotics. Can you elaborate on why you believe that? How do robots fit into the SpaceX TAM? Thanks, Gwen.
Let me try to put something together for you. I think what I might have said is underappreciating the amount of connectivity that we will need going forward. And I think robotics, especially robotics tied to AI, like for autos and humanoid robots, will dramatically increase the demand for connectivity. Dramatically. Elon talked about that in his remarks.
I mean, you can think about satellites as being robots. I mean, they're autonomous and they do not need servicing. So, and then, in the sort of what may seem the far future, but will come faster than you think, using robots on the moon to scale up manufacturing on the moon, which I know it sounds like super sci-fi right now, but it's going to happen, will enable us to build the mass accelerator on the moon. And if you have a mass accelerator on the moon and you have solar and radiator production on the moon, you can I know this sounds totally nuts, but you can probably scale to 1,000 times the economy of Earth in terms of intelligence launched to space, but probably, maybe even 1,000,000 times. So, we are going to land a lot of tonnage on the moon. We're going to build the factories on the moon. The robots will be helpful with that. And then it's like, well, how much intelligence would you like as we, grow towards being a Kardashev 2 scale civilization?
Did that get that for you, Adam?
Your next question comes from the line of John Godden with Citigroup. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. One of the hallmarks of SpaceX to date is how efficiently the organization has used capital so far in its journey. But it's also no secret that the capital needs are significant to support your vision from here. Obviously, the company's moving fast, so I was hoping you could talk a bit more about the CapEx outlook across the segments, touch upon any areas where buying versus building might accelerate growth. The mobile strategy obviously comes to mind there, and any related thoughts on capital needs for next steps in extreme vertical integration like Terafab, anything that's needed to support future growth. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think we are very proud of how we have managed capital allocation over the years, for sure. I think we are continuing down that path, right? If you look at it, we have been very efficient to date, and I think we'll continue to be. If you look at the rest of this year, to answer specifically on CapEx, I think you should probably think that the next 2 quarters are very similar to the current quarter from a CapEx level perspective. But I do think, as you look at longer term, I think CapEx really, I think for our perspective, is all CapEx is not the same, right? What we're seeing right now is a situation where we're able to deploy, specifically on the AI compute side, we're able to deploy capital in such a way that we're getting less than a 1-year payback. It's almost like your capital is becoming almost an item that you would put otherwise in COGS because it's moving so quickly in, as far as monetization and moving into revenue. That's different than, I would say, historically on the SpaceX level where, we're building assets that are going to benefit us from launch sites for the next couple of decades. And so we certainly manage for, optimizing ROI on our capital, all the time from that perspective.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. As Brett mentioned, we are expecting to reach 100 billion plus ARR in December of this year. And it's probably also worth mentioning that our internal projections for reaching $1 trillion in revenue, not ARR, but revenue, have moved up from 2031 to 2030. So prior to the IPO, the financial projections we had were reaching $1 trillion in revenue in 2031. We now expect that to be in 2030. And there's a non-zero chance of that being in 2029.
Your next question comes from the line of Ronald Epstein with Bank of America. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hey, good evening, everybody. Could you walk through what you learned on Starship Launch 13? What was better than expected? What was worse? And then, how do we think about this in the journey to kind of rapid reusability, the heat shields, so on and so forth?
Sure. So actually Flight 13, I was a little worried about that Flight 13, because think of Apollo 13, like things went wrong on that flight, but this flight actually went incredibly well. The heat shield appears to be very robust. The ship is still floating in the ocean, and we expect to recover the ship and bring it back for analysis. So I'd say things look very good. And that's why we, assuming we receive regulatory approval to do so, we'll attempt to catch the ship with the tower on the next flight, which is tentatively scheduled for the end of this month. We expect the cadence of flights to be increasing rapidly, and probably a year from now, we will be doing at least one flight a day, possibly more.
Your next question comes from the line of Doug Anmuth with J.P. Morgan. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thanks so much for taking the questions. Elon, can you elaborate on the key unlocks from leveraging your rockets and satellite expertise just in accelerating the pace of compute build-out? And then totally appreciate the $6.7 billion in incremental compute deals. Can you talk more about just how you expect the supply-demand environment to persist going forward and whether you'll be able to keep this kind of premium pricing for these deals and sustainability? Thanks.
Sure. Well, as the saying goes, normally they would say this ain't rocket science. Well, actually, rocket science is literally our daily business. And rocket science is a idiomatic expression for extreme technological difficulty, and there's a reason for it. Because the thing, let me tell you what rockets desperately want to do every flight. They desperately want to blow themselves into tiny pieces. But then the engineering struggle is to convince the rocket not to blow itself into tiny pieces and actually deliver payload to orbit. But you'll note that some of our competitors do in fact blow their rockets up. This is not a reflection on their. This does not mean they're incapable. In fact, I think our competitors are very smart people. But despite being very smart, the rockets still blow up. So now, if you apply a small amount of the engineering skill that goes into making gigantic rockets reach orbit on a regular basis reliably to terrestrial data centers, this is like, frankly, the New York Yankees going in and playing a little league team, and it's kind of ridiculous, frankly. This is like the terrestrial data centers are a trivial problem compared to making gigantic reusable rockets, and which are launched frequently. And the Starlink satellites also are like alien level technology. There's still nothing that compares to our Starlink V2 satellites, and our V3 satellites are really more than an order of magnitude better than our V2 satellites. So you take a small percentage of that engineering applied to terrestrial data centers, and you get an amazing outcome. So that's what we're seeing. Yeah. Now, from a monetization standpoint, if you say what's my best guess for monetization per watt of say Rubens, my guess is would be somewhere between $30 and $50. This is just a guess. I'm just take a guess as a guess. But what we're seeing with AI is that the intelligence per watt is increasing rapidly. So that means the usefulness per watt is increasing rapidly. And I think anyone who's a close follower of the AI arena, you start seeing smaller and smaller models do more and more amazing things. There's an argument that we may get to the point where even an H100 is able to deliver useful AI that's comparable to a human engineer. Based on current trends, I think that's not an impossible outcome. So then it's like, how useful would that be? I think the usefulness is going to be extremely high. I mean, if you think of where was AI 12 months ago? I mean, this is 12 months ago would have been August last year. That would have been before the advent of Claude 4.5, which I think should be considered one of the milestones and a credit to Anthropic. I would say a shock to the system was how good Claude 4.5 was. And that was 10 months ago, basically. And if you say, well, what about an AI 2 years ago? I think, well, an AI 2 years ago feels like something that should be in a museum, okay? Where you're like, you're not going to believe this, but 2 years ago, this was AI. This relic. So I think, by the end of next year, it's not clear to me that there's anything that digital, at least, that AI won't be able to do based on the current rate of improvement. Then look at the rate at which logic and memory is being produced. And one must always consider the limiting factor here. Limiting factor currently is memory. The memory output is increasing by around 20% per year. Now, normally that would be fantastically fast and amazing for any large mature industry. But ask yourself, is the demand increasing by 20% a year? No, the demand is increasing by 200% a year, maybe higher. So if you've got demand increasing much faster than supply, then economics 101 would suggest that the price increases. It does not decrease.
Your next question comes from the line of Edison Yu with Deutsche Bank. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for taking our question. Wanted to come back on the comment about the $100 billion in ARR. Is there any way you can unpack that a little bit and perhaps kind of what it takes to get there? And then in relation to that, Elon, I know you mentioned you pulled the revenue target forward by a year. Can you maybe call out maybe a few things that gave you this extra confidence? Thank you.
Well, on the unpacking, I think that the key there is it's really growth in all three of the business segments. But the biggest piece is, and we already talked about, additional business we've already closed in the first couple of weeks of July on the AI cloud services side. But certainly, as you know, we've already announced some previous deals with Google and Anthropic that start to ramp either later this quarter or in October. And so there's a lot of momentum from that side of the business, as well as we're seeing strength in our own models and Cursor coming into the fold as well. So it's really all three segments that are driving that, but the cloud services piece being the largest contributor of that piece.
Yes, to be clear, the $100 billion ARR in December is not a question mark. That's what we'd achieve if we basically did nothing. So, I think it may be higher than that. It probably will be higher than that. I think in terms of the relative percentage of breakdown of like what revenue generates what, I think the breakdown is probably similar to what we shared pre-IPO. It's just happening a year sooner. I will go back to what I said and what Gwen and Brett mentioned earlier, which is that we do expect a very rapid increase in revenue from Starlink communications from the V3 satellite. Because like I said, it's more than 10 times the capability of the V2 satellite, and we'll be launching 10 times as many. And we have the direct to cell constellation going up as well. So, sometimes people are looking at the sort of historical growth of Starlink based on V2, but we have a massive step change happening with the V3 satellite.
Your next question comes from the line of John Hodulik with UBS. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Two things. First, Elon, just following up on that comment on Starlink Mobile. When do you expect to start launching the V2s? Can you talk about your appetite for additional spectrum after the EchoStar deal? And then just how big do you think that the opportunity is in mobile? And if you could compare that to the broadband business, that would be great. And then secondly, just a quick follow-up on the compute. Looks like you have a big ramp in compute coming in 2027. How should we think of that capacity being leased versus used for to train Grok? I guess in other words, how much of that has to be withheld to train Grok versus that can be leased out to third parties? Thanks.
I'll go ahead and take the Starlink mobile questions, John. We're going to start flying the next generation Starlink mobile satellite, which is confusing. It's actually the second version, as opposed to the V3, which is the broadband, next generation broadband satellite. We're going to start flying those next year. And just so you understand, currently the system that we're operating uses about 5 megahertz of bandwidth. And we operate that through local telco providers. We have 65 megahertz of bandwidth available to us through the EchoStar spectrum, which gives massive increase in capability. Another way to look at it is we were also probably 10x the number of satellites. So simplifying, you could look at the Starlink mobile leveraging this, the next generation satellite and the EchoStar spectrum as being 100 times better, 10 times 10 better than what we've got right now. And it's a pretty decent service. You can do voice and video calls over Signal and WhatsApp. So we anticipate really strong uptake of that capability. As far as revenue, like I'm just going to take a very high level kind of top down. The big three in the United States, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mo, roughly between them $600 billion a year. And I anticipate us to be able to acquire quite a few of their customers because I think our service will be better. We will eliminate dead zones, leveraging basically the satellites in orbit. It'll be better during any sort of natural disaster because surprisingly, even though space movies make space look super dangerous, is a pretty quiescent environment. So I'm quite excited about Starlink Mobile going forward. We will start to fly the satellites next year, and we will start providing service end of next year.
You're next.
I guess I should elaborate on. We obviously have like more than one question being asked here, but obviously if somebody's trying to create a financial model, some of these questions are you have to plug in some number here. So for Grok training, we do expect the percentage of compute that we use internally for Grok training to decrease over time and to have far more of the compute used for inference or for renting training and inference compute to others. So I would expect maybe 10% of our compute to be used for Grok training, something like that.
Your next question comes from the line of Katgun Marl with Evercore ISI. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thanks for taking the question. I had a follow-up on Starlink Mobile and your ambitions in the U.S. market in particular. I think a lot of us are trying to better understand what a U.S. direct-to-consumer service could look like. To become a true fourth U.S. carrier would imply well over $100 billion of mobile capex over time, much of it auction spectrum and greenfield infrastructure. So how are you weighing that potential build plan against an MVNO or acquisition path? And what's your internal base case on how far you'll take this ambition? Or is this all a little bit too premature at this point? Thank you.
The spectrum that we purchased from EchoStar does have terrestrial components, so we definitely intend to build out the terrestrial component. So you will have not only the capacity from the satellites themselves, but you will have a build out of the terrestrial, basically the hardware and systems necessary to make a true mobile service exactly what you want it to be. I'm not going to talk about the CapEx for that. It's a little, well, I don't want to say it's immature. I'm just going to say I'm not going to talk about the CapEx for that right now. But let's talk a little, let me give a little hint, and that is you could put a base station, a cellular base station on basically the gear that holds a Starlink broadband dish. So you can have kind of these little femtocells around the country, and you deploy that as you need it. You don't have to necessarily spend, 10 or many billions of dollars in low band spectrum all upfront before you deploy your system. That's why I don't want to talk about the CapEx for building out the terrestrial, because we have a lot of really kind of great and new ideas for how we're going to do that. And I think it will be quite CapEx efficient.
Yeah, that point is probably worth just a few more words, which is that because this is quite an important point. Instead of having to deploy these very expensive and difficult to locate large cellular base stations, we feel reasonably confident that we can deploy a large number of sort of small stations, essentially, that they're really just Starlink dishes that also provide connectivity in the mobile spectrum bands, and have them be all over the place. And the Starlink antennas are located on the roofs of houses and businesses. So they've got a sort of a clear view for providing connectivity directly to cell phones on the ground. And in fact, providing connectivity that is, we think, probably better and higher bandwidth than what is currently available from cellular providers. This is an important point.
Thank you. With the remaining time, we would like to cover some of the questions from individual shareholders. I will read them aloud. We got a lot of questions on the progress for Starship human landing system. Can we provide any updates?
For Starship, well, obviously we need to make Starship super reliable for satellites before we put any people on board. But we are expecting to have a very high launch rate and thus achieve a level of safety needed for humans very quickly, probably by the end of next year.
As far as the milestones go, propellant transfer in orbit is critical to our both our internal SpaceX as well as our HLS ambitions. Artemis 3 mission is next year. That's where we will dock with the Orion spacecraft. We will follow that up with a direct to lunar cargo mission, uncrewed. And then we want to put boots on the ground, boots on the moon in 2028.
For the Cursor acquisition, there were several questions asking about the combined product roadmap for the companies once it closes.
I think we'll leave that to, we'll probably make some announcement or discussion of that outside of the earnings call. But we don't want to jump the gun on regulators for the closing the acquisition. So we're trying to get the acquisition closed as quickly as possible. I think we're pretty close to that, but we have to be wary of sort of jumping the gun on regulatory closures.
Next question from the individual shareholders. Once you start launching broadband V3 satellites, how quickly will they translate into improved Starlink service?
Well, so we'd need some critical mass of V3 satellites, probably at least on the order of about 1,000. But probably that's, I mean, approximately second quarter next year would be, I think, where we'd get to that point.
And our last question, is the heat shield the hardest remaining problem for Starship?
Look, I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I think I'd consider the heat shield problem solved at this point. Now we want to take a close look at the ship that is currently floating in the ocean, but all indications from data and our visual inspection suggest that that we have solved the heat shield problem, which is arguably the single biggest problem. That doesn't mean we won't make improvements to the heat shield. Of course, we'll continue to make improvements to the heat shield, but I would say that we do not see any technical obstacles at this point to achieving full and rapid reusability.
Thank you. This concludes today's call. You can reach us at ir.spacex.com, and we will see you next quarter. Cheers.
This concludes today's call. Thank you for attending. You may now disconnect.
那结束了哈。是记了一些笔记啊，这个主要是刚刚切换到 Mac 这边来，还挺不适应的。这个看一下，拉的不好烦。稍等一下，主要是这边最大化的这边有窗户最大化了就别。我操，Mac 是真用不来了。我看一下。算了，直接这边切吧啊！我就说我再加一下一个屏幕，把我的笔记拿出来看一下。笔记的话在。大概这样吧。现在比较乱，刚起来睡得有点没睡醒，有一些，反正很多都是比较散的，很多数字的话我也没有记清，我感觉大概回顾一下看。老马的开场致辞的话，我看，反正没有惊起太多水花，我感觉，收盘之后感觉更多是机构嘛，好像对这个都还不是很买账。我觉得其实这次财报，反正开始也讲了，整体来说是比较惊艳的嘛。尤其是收入、营收，尤其是 AI 算力租赁这一块，可能还有芯片这块的营收都是比预期的要高很多的。当然，还有一个问题就是它的支出可能也比预期的高很多，这可能是一个问题哈。然后总体看那个老马的致辞这边的话，反正还是比较规矩的，基本上就是讲一讲新链，不，先讲一下新建的一些里程碑，还有是 V3版的新链和算力服务这一块。然后最后是 StarMine 基本上这4块啊。那么新建这一块和预期差不多啊，就是说13飞的时候完成了，就是说入轨和上级回收的一些前期的一些验证所需的内容嘛，就是我们说的那个真空再点火和多次的模拟降落。那么下次也许就会尝试可以就是捕获上级和载荷入轨，然后目标也提了一下，就可能是想做到之后运营开始希望每年运载能够是100万吨，之后大家想做1000万吨，这个都是很长期的事情，其实没什么意思啊。然后新链也提了一下，这个我自己的那个前瞻里面也跟大家强调过，就是新链 V3 肯定是之后中期的一个最大的一个增长点，因为它是单体的话，老马说是一个数量级性能提升的，整个网络的话数量上啊，还有一个数量级提升，合在一起的话，整个 V3系列应该是可以带来2个数量级的一个这个数量和收入的提升的。这个新链业务线之后就应该是可以增长100倍的，而且这个时间应该不会花太久，因为它一旦开始部署之后，到它一个基本上更迭完成的话，也就是5、6年的事情啊，可能5、6年都不用。我大概可以去看吧。5年就是你想新链这一块可以，当然这是我自己的一个想法，就是可能就是6年左右是100倍的一个提升，这个很多人其实是没有看到的，这个增长应该是非常夸张的。当然，更加短期的肯定是一个算力品租服务这一块是一个特别大的一个一个重点吧，一个重点。而且接下来就今年下半年的一个收入最重要的肯定是这个，然后他还提到一个比较，就这次财报里面新的也是特别重要的一个信息是，他们可能之后的算力建设，包括是地面和太空的，都会完全使用英伟达的芯片，英伟达 GPU，这个是一个不好意思。不好意思，刚才声音太小了。刚才那个财报的时候，我把声音关小了，不好意思，我刚才说的有点白说是吧？重新回去说，我完全说了一句， 嘿嘿，我现在声音好了，对吧？现在声音好了。不好意思，不好意思，刚才因为对，刚才财报的时候把声音关小了，然后忘了调回来了。行，好，那我重新说一下，反正就整体来说，我感觉财报还是比较惊艳的，就是说，但是股价没有什么反应，可能是收盘之后，可能应该是主要是机构在交易嘛。我个人感觉就是收入这块 beat 还挺多的，尤其是总的营收比华尔街预期的要多了一个10亿嘛，这个还是很厉害的。尤其算力租赁服务比我预算的还要多一点，他们这边财报里面具体点出来的16亿啊，刚好是在我估的上限上面，我觉得可以吹一波哈。那其他的像是新量啊，还有就是说 Brook，这里其实也有很多新的一个营收是我没有算到的，所以营收其实多出很多啊。但你看总的一个营收不盈利状况，其实收支还是没有做到一个盈利，说明它的支出其实也比华尔街预期的高了很多，这可能是一个担忧点。但我估计华尔街会更在乎它的一个支出的一个情况。但我觉得估计散户这边其实更在乎的就是说它的一个营收和展望可能会更在乎，所以明天会怎么样，我们再看吧。那老马的开场致辞里面的话，其实相对比较规矩，我就说是4块去讲吧，金建还有星链 B3，还有是算力的相关，还有就是 StarMine 的，就是轨道算力这几块去讲。新建这块的话，等一下现在可以对吧？呃，新建这块，新建这块的话和我们预想差不多啊，就是13飞的时候完成了入轨和上级回收的一个验证的条件。那么14飞的时候应该就可以尝试去捕获上级和进行新链的一个入轨。然后他还是说了一下非常长期的一个新建的一个运力载荷入目标，每年100万吨啊，1000万吨，这个我倒不是这2年的事情，我倒不用着急。然后接下来这个 V3星链相关的，我觉得是非常非常赞同的，这个是被绝大部分人低估的一个点啊，而且这个确定性是非常高的，因为就是它 V3毕竟已经拉出来6过了嘛，新建也在上一次是也打过20克啊，所以这个 V3的部署和展开，这是一个非常有确定性的事情，而 V3的话，老买提的就说是一个是单颗星是一个数量级的提升，而整个网络的话数量又再一个数量级的提升，合在一起的话。那么 V3星链应该是2个数量级的一个提升，而且你去算它的一个部署时间，其实一个星座的换代也就5-6年差不多就够了，而且考虑到之后新建的可能加提快部署的一个速率啊，其实可能6年都用不到，那么来了一个100倍的提升，其实这是一个非常夸张的一个事情。那么现在星链就已经是它营收的一个最主体了，那么你想象一下100倍是一个什么概念呢？其实意味着。那其实 V3的星链的100倍提升，就意味着 SpaceX 这个公司的营收增长就有一个100倍的提升，而且这个确定性是比较高的。这个我觉得不是老马画大饼的问题，这个我觉得是有高度确定性的一个事情。那接着是算力服务，那么这个也是按照几瓦的一个，就按照瓦数去说的嘛。好像是说年底希望做到10几瓦左右。那财报里面好像有说是可能不是明年，是明年嘛。也许是到明年年底，是我记得后面的回答问题的时候，好像是按照他们的相关设备是按照20几瓦的一个框架去做的，像准备散热和电力等等，应该是这样去部署，但实际上可能做不到那么高。但因为就说它是便宜的技术配套设备的话，要提前做，而不能要卡就卡在芯片这种比较贵的部分。后面是有提到。我觉得算力这边最重要的一个财报的一个新消息啊，那么就说是他们会完全采用英伟达路线，这个我其实是有些惊讶，而且有些不理解，就是说因为，像是 Terafab 这个的话，他们不是跟英特尔合作嘛，但是他们这边又明确表示，他们之后的算力的部署，无论是地面还是太空呢，都会完全就是只使用英伟达的芯片 ，exclusive。这个还是比较惊讶的，而且在财报前的几个小时，应该是，在 X 上面正好有一个新的公布啊，就是他们跟那个英伟达达成合作，去做他们算力卫星相关的，就在算力卫星上面和英伟达也是达成合作。这个我也没有想到，原本我以为 SpaceX 和英伟达可能是一个竞争的关系啊，但结果这边变成合作关系了，这个也算水到渠成。我估计英伟达一直是想做这个事情的。 我原来就是没有想到，就是说 SpaceX 可能会愿意去达成这个合作，但去想可能也是合理的，因为就是说在这个阶段，其实能用的比较好用的芯片也只有英伟达的芯片，对吧？他们刚才提 Black Ruby，就是也提了具体的型号。那么这个阶段应该是只有英伟达芯片是可以用的，那么算力卫星其实应该是要快铺开了。那么他们应该是想自己做芯片的想法肯定是还在的，但是那个自研芯片投入使用肯定是2、3年内可能是不大可能的，所以这里阶段用英伟达芯片其实也是合理的。那么之前跟4月份的时候，英伟达说是要进军太空算力，这其实也对得上。总归这个是一个特别重要的消息，也是值得大家去解读的，也就是说。SpaceX 的算力会完全走英伟达路线这一点，怎么去解读这个问题？那么 StarMind 应该对这边就是太空这边啊，太空这边的算力也是直接说了英伟达的一个具体的芯片，他们说可能会是它的外部架构会做一些优化，甚至他说可能是为了做算力卫星的时候，他们设立了一个就是 Crack，就是它的一个机箱的设计应该是做了很多简化。他觉得这些简化很好，也打算把它用到地面的一个算力部署上面。大概提了一下。所以基本上这4块啊，也算整体来说比较中规中矩吧。我觉得最重要的是跟英伟达的合作，还有就是说是，他们可能像是 StarMind 的机箱的构架是做了简化，他觉得整个的价格会变低了。但这里只是硬件成本，发射成本它没有算进去。这个也算一个小点吧，但透露的也不是特别多。那么 Shortwell 它是社总的话，他应该是提的，就内容会更加密集一些。对 Terafab 肯定是要搞的，我觉得 Terafab 还是要搞的，但是可能 Terafab 不是这2年能够供应的吧。那但是算力卫星其实，后面可能有提到，可能明年就要开始发了啊，可能明年就要开始发了。那么我不确定，待会再看一下。反正算力卫星得上马，那而且它自己的 AI 业务，就常规的地面算力也是肯定是在扩展军备的，所以这个阶段你也不能等到自建的芯片，那都得等到猴年马月了。跟英伟达达成战略合作到好像这样说也对。我看一下，这个是没有算力卫星不会等那么久的，就是老马在包括之前还有这次财报里面一再强调，就是说他把算力卫星这个事情说的很简单，他这次财报里面直接说算力卫星还比不上星链 V2的那个难度，那应该不会等很久啊，算力卫星不会等很久，至少是少量的，因为其前期的话更多的是实验性质会更多一点，实验性质的话肯定是要尽快开展了，让迭代一下之后才要进入一个量产。估计是这样，会有这个前中后期的一个变化，但前期应该是不会等太久。那么社总这边提了很多东西啊，看一下挑重点去看吧，有重点有印象，应该是对政府相关业务的营收增长是比较快的，后面也有提到应该是年化有108%的增长，这个肯定也是这次财报里面比较额外的一个收入啊，相对比较意外的一个收入，对。新链的话，新链方面第二季度新增用户1.7 million，170万用户啊，第二季度其实这个用户增长速率好像是整个季度就是历史季度新增最快嘛。但是就如果把它换成百分比的话，其实是有所下降的，但是绝对数量的增长还是最高还是最快的一个季度。那么均价是66美元，这点我们很重要啊。那么之后我们去计算新链相关业务的营收的时候，这就是很好的一个基准点，就官方报价第二季度的一个就是平均用户的均价是66美元，这个其实是比较偏高的。那么后面财报的时候也有提到，因为他们现在比较重视就是 B 端业务的扩张，其实是比 C 端业务的扩张要快很多的。这个可能更多是因为新链这个业务，我们在播客的时候也提过，就它之前其实是主要走的是 C 端了，前期的时候其实在 B 端它做的比较差，甚至可以这样说。那么现在空它其实在补课了，老马后面也在回答问题的时候提过，就是说，确实前期的时候它的新链的稳定性啊做的其实还是不是很好。他提的一个 uptime 这种，可能还有流量的稳定性等等，这点是 B 端用户特别看重的，就商业用户特别看重的。 那么所以之前其实有那么一个印象，就是星链在大客户这边的服务不是特别好，那可能甚至还比不上 OneWeb 之类的。所以现在他们有了很多改善之后，也会在积极的去做这方面的营销啊，专门去派人去游说，还有去帮他们去上门去做设置等等，来去证明就是说星链在 B 端的一个实力，这也是他们目前的一个重点发展。所以在这次财报里面也有体现嘛，就说是政府业务啊，还有就是其他的 B 端用户是一个增长是比 C 端用户更快的，所以你看到均价其实也是在上涨的。那么看一下 V3，对 V3的新链是特别强调了一下，社总这边提了一下，老马后面也提了一下，应该他们中文提了3次，说到同一句话，就说 V3 新链啊新链的 V3 版本在几年后可能会承担一个世界通讯的主体啊，也就他们可能会认为就是靠新链的，到这个可能具体是不是这个意思不好说，就是可能直接字面上去想的话，也就是说通过新链走的流量数量可能会比其他网络走的数量更高。但这个逻辑其实也是很简单的，就是说他们认为星链对吧？V3它是有一个2个数量级的增长潜力的，但如果你按照2个数量级的增长去看的话，那么那星链的一个网络的服务能力的话，就会超过世界上就全世界的现有的网络服务能力。这个是一个你乍一听很扯淡，但是你去算一下的话，其实也不是那么夸张的一个事情。就是 V3确确实实他们卫星已经出来了嘛，25倍下行和40倍的上行单行，对吧？然后它部署的数量，现在审批和申请应该都是比前一代要多很多。不管说最后能批下来多少吧，反正肯定是不会比第一代少。就是现在也不是第一代吧，就现有的 B2系列，它总共申请的是1万多颗嘛，15000嘛，可能是大概这个数量级啊。那么 B3系列肯定是奔着5万往上的。一般他们可能是长期是要10万、20万去，所以他们确实是会做到一个就是100倍的一个总网络带宽，他真的是会往那个方向去做。那么，这句话他们提了3次，就说星链可能几年后会成为世界上最主流的一个通讯方式。那么跟新的航空的合作，他们后面也提到，就跟航空业务的渗透率大概有10%现在。那么他觉得这个其实还有很大的上涨空间。还是那句话，就是他们前期其实在这方面做的不是很好。航海那边其实业务是无敌的寂寞，对吧？但是航空这边他们前期其实部署是比其他像是OneWeb 啊，甚至亚马逊可能谈的都更慢啊。亚马逊前期谈的合作可能多很多，虽然他自己的网络还没有真正跑起来。之前可能是OneWeb更加领先吧，在这航空这一块的部署。那么这个也是它目前的一个发展重点。它星链肯定是能打，但是这块前期做的不好，那它就现在开始发力，现在是10%左右。他也提到有的客人可能会为了星链啊，就是宁可是多飞几个短途转机，而不是做直飞啊，就是为了要有星链的一个入网的一个条件。他提到会跟更多这个季度新增了一些运营商的合作。这个特别重要，就是他不是买了 Echo Star 的频谱嘛？这个后面提问的时候也有提到，就是什么时候会开始用？他们的说法应该是明年开始会去做相应的，就是利用新频谱的手机智能卫星的部署，从明年开始。那么希望是在明年年底啊开始投入一个运营，也就是明年年底或者后年年初吧。就新的手机智联业务会开始使用，也就是说这个巨大的收购，它真正开始产生效益啊，就是说是1年多以后吧，1年半以后啊。那么算力平珠数字没有记下来，这个反正还是可以翻财报的。Cursor 也是简单提一下，他们因为是个比较大的收购嘛，但其实就说白了就是为了好像听上去的意思就是把这个团队挖过来去做 AI 相关的一个事情，但没有说他们具体要干嘛。是吧？理解了，可以做干网 B 端，对对，我再看一下，其他的话，财务这边我就没有仔细听了，就是他说的也比较快，我看看有什么重点。发射这边营收是55%的提升，对对对，这个对 这个和我之前的理解和我开始自己看的时候的理解基本上是完全一样的。打电话，我们切到这边吧，切到这边。反正我倒也不继续查了，这样时间也有点累了，我就快速过一下笔记就完了。说到是对，台风这边的和理解差不多，主要是商单数量稍微多一点，就是第二季度第10次，第三季度是第一季度的话是那个7次嘛，对吧？然后主要是单价会更高，单价更高。然后但是整体的话，因为尤其是新建相关的基础设施，尤其是发射场相关的一些投入的话会比较大，所以 R&D 的研发还是会比较多，所以整体应该是处于一个亏损。而且这个投入的话，应该是比较大的。我们可以看一下它这边的 operation， depreciation loss from operation， 应该就这一栏啊，就这栏。诶，它的运营投入其实比上一个季度要收窄了呀。research and development，OK， 这里，比上季度略多啊，也多的不是很多。上季度的话是一个9.3亿，这次的话是10.76亿啊，也有所增长。运营的话倒是收窄，运营整体是收窄，因为有收入嘛，对。但是 R&D 投入的话，其实还是有所增加的，然后 AI 算力的话，还是 Grok 有一些弊端的增长，这个可能是也没有算到的。然后算力平珠是它的收入，它提到了是1.6 billion 啊，就是16亿，哈哈哈哈。我记得华尔街算的应该是不到13亿啊。然后，看一下我自己算的应该是一个12到16亿，中位数14亿啊。其实被我猜到了是吧？这个被我压到了啊，这个被我压到了。等一下有没有看到？就是对吧？对，不好意思。对吧？这个是我自己的估算嘛，这个比华尔街估算要准一些哈。那这个可以吹一效果。再来看，EchoStar 的花费也比较多，就 AI 这个，就是整体就是它提高一下，就是因为一个比较明显的问题是它的资本投入、花费等等还是很高的啊。那么他们提交一下，他在强调资本开支的效率和投入和回报的时间等等。给人的感觉就是在说，我们不是在乱花钱，我们是在很小心的、很有效率的花钱。但其实应该就是言下之意，还就是他承认一点，就是他们花钱现在烧钱其实是非常厉害的。这肯定是就是尤其从机构的投资者来说，特别不愿意乐见的一点。那现在就是感觉对花钱很敏感啊，就是尤其是华尔街，像是 AI 或者半导体那边，其实也是一样的逻辑。其实不是说不看好 AI，对吧？就是你们烧钱烧的太快了，烧的人心慌。烧那么多，但是暂时还看不到相应的回报，所以让人比较担忧。这可能是现在的一个整体投资界的一个通病吧，就是对花钱这件事情比较敏感。但我觉得其实你要是奔着一个比较大的一个未来图景的话，其实你就应该花钱花的很厉害。我其实个人是这样理解的。Anyway，他们在财报里面的说法是，就是说他们花钱花的很讲究效率，很讲究一个方法侧重，会把那些那个投入产出比比较高，然后回报时间周期比较短的，会优先去投钱啊。Anyway，我们说的第二季度的一个现金增量和包括 IPO 的融资和贷款融资，这个我们都知道。Anyway。好像是有特别提到一点，这也是一个新的点嘛，就是第三季度初的时候，其实有一个6.7亿左右的跟 AI 6.7 billion，就是67亿的一个新 AI 相关的一个订单，这个指的是什么？我不是很清楚啊，那个回头再看一下，应该是已经公布出来了。Q&A 的话，我看一下这个。对新链的用户粘性啊，还有航空的渗透率，还有 B 端的增长，这个我们刚才也讲过了。那么包括就是说前期做的不好，这里就是老马在回答问题的时候说了嘛，这时候新链其实确实 B 端用户铺开做的不大好，现在是在改善。27年底是不是做10几瓦的一个算力？那么确实27年底就是明年年底。 那么说这边提到老马提到，就说因为它是配套的框架是奔着目标是定在20G瓦，但实际可能也许就做到15G瓦，看到时候瓶颈在哪里吧。我们又提了，花了很长时间说我们是搞火箭的，我们很擅长搞硬件的这种事情，对吧？就说搞这些东西是我们擅长的。但反而我记得问题的时候，好像有在问他的需求和供应方面，是想他提一下，需求和供应方面他好像没怎么提。后来是 Shotwell 插进来之后，是他们两个人联合说了一下，应该是机器人，不，后面是补充的问题是说 Shotwell 应该提过机器人的重要性，他是说怎么理解嘛？就机器人跟 SpaceX 业务相关的一个说法。那么他的是两个人都说了一下，就是 AI 和机器人业务的爆发式增长的话，就全世界角度来讲，应该会使通讯的需求的量会急剧的增长啊，也就是说。他们新链的一个总服务能力往上增长2个数量级是为了啥哈？有没有相应的需求？可能是这样去叙述的。而老马去说了很多，老马为了把这个问题说清楚，他打了一些很月球的比方，然后而且说了很长远，什么月球工厂啊，月球轨道投送啊，什么等等，这个我觉得有点跑题了。我觉得弹幕虽然当时也在讲，但我觉得这个是月球什么月球经济其实现在一个是还是偏画饼，偏画饼，而且有点跑题了。这个，哎，不愧是老马。那么 CapEx 的需要，也就是资本的一个投资需要，那么好像就是在说效率很高之类的，好像没有说什么特别。这边也是还是就说他们会比较重视一些效率啊，还有投资回报率啊，还有就是转化周期啊等等之类的。他们认为是像是发射台的话，转化周期就是1年左右。前期投入比较厉害的时候，到它能够投入使用大概是1年的周期。这个我估计这个也是一个参考点。也就现在如果说他们要新建一些发射台的话，他们可能会认为只需要1年左右的时间。这我估计我们看的可能是PET 3期那边的一个时间表。100 billion 的收入，这个好像是今年吧，今年应该是想要，就他今年就说应该是想实现1000亿的年化营收，而且老马的意思就是说这个是一个基本上板上钉钉的事情，就是他们不去做任何新的事情，应该就可以拿到的。对呀，其实说白了就是，就是我看就是这边这次提问里面有2次提问都是关于就是年度就说100 billion 的一个营收的问题嘛。好像还是一种不可置信的感觉。但其实你只要把那个 Anthropic 和谷歌的那个算力租赁的合同拿过来看的话，对吧？其实就已经有就有多少呢？就有个20多 billion 的吧，应该是，是不是20多？一个是对，一个是15 billion 对吧？那个是也是对，这里就有20多个 billion 了。然后他们有一些新的一个 AI 出租相关的一个营收单子公布了，那边又是一个6个 billion 对吧？其实光算力这边就你能凑出30-40个 billion，其实很多的。哎，白天了，白色，所以这个其实应该是也是很有确定性的，估计不知道为什么会有这个问题。然后老马提了一下，就是说他们内部时间表想要达成1个trillion的，也就是万亿营收啊，万亿营收的目标时间从2031年提前到了2030年，这个又是一个震惊，这个可以当一个标题啊，这个一个当一个醒目的标题。空差想要在2030年实现万亿营收啊，也不夸张吧，这个主要是 AI 和星链吧，星链。对，星链现在是一个星链现在是多少？星链现在是我们看一下 connectivity 的话，每个季度现在的营收是，一个季度的营收是66 million 对吧？66，million。那它的一个年化的话，应该是一个，我是不是看错per month，这是每月的。那么整个季度的话是。整个季度是4.2 billion，那么因为目前的一个年化的就是一个50左右啊， 目前它就是一个50 billion 左右了，对吧？然后我们把这个去乘以100倍的话，那么就是一个，其实不需要100倍，它只需要再增长一个20倍，它只要增长20倍就可以达成万亿。那么20倍，还是可能的吧，我觉得这个倒不是特别夸张。所以库它这个东西的成长性其实还是比较强的，就是经常说你去说数量级的提升是可以的，这样想还挺可怕的，这样想还挺可怕的。你要说这想起来还挺可怕。就 V3系列的重要性确实是很夸张的，就现在是4点，对吧？年化的话是50个 billion 不到吧？之后的话20倍的提升，5年的时间，4年的时间。4年的时间20倍的提升有点难，可能还达不到啊，可能达不到。但是，它的万亿营收的话，应该是5年，我觉得肯定是没有什么太大问题的。我觉得5年应该是没什么问题。但确实也有可能啊，就说是他，因为他们现在定的所谓他们内部目标嘛，应该都是特别乐观的，就是一般就是 shoot high 对吧？不 aim high 对吧？即使你没有达成的，你其实设的也是会比较高。对，我觉得他2031年达成万亿营收真的不夸张。看到哪儿了？看过了13飞的总结，格肉这个没有什么特别，就是说14飞的月底是14飞的目标时间是月底，和我们预期的差不多。13飞老马说之前还挺担心，结果是很好的。格肉也很完美，他们打算会收S40的上级啊。他后面提到就是说发射频率之后会增加很多，然后他最后要达成每天1发左右的一个能力，这个是什么时候啊？我没有听清楚啊。反正今年应该不大可能嘛，他应该是在说什么时候，我也不知道。最终吗？最终的话应该就不是指每天1发的一个能力了哈，应该是更多。所以我不知道他说，难道是明年年底？明年年底每天1发左右的发射频率，还是我不知道是什么时候啊？算了，这个过掉。算好热，空调关掉了。这边算力这边时候，老马说了很多，我们是搞火箭的啊，所以搞其他东西，像搞算力其实很简单啦，有些算力卫星非常简单，算力卫星还比不上 V2星链的一个难度啊之类的。然后又提了很多什么现在的 AI 和以前的 AI 差别很大，所以未来的 AI 又会差别很大等等。然后也提了一下，就说存储是现在一个 AI 发展或者整个，对啊，就是算力发展的一个瓶颈嘛。这个也是很明确了哈。现在成熟股有多火，和 AI 就是AI 里面最明显的一个讨论最多的，也就是最多的就是存储嘛。然后老马也说了一下，就说什么，其实 AI 的增长需求每年增长需求不是什么20%-30%，对吧？现在业界讨论可能一般都是这种级别的几十的一个增长，但是他觉得每年其实真正 AI 需求的增长是200%啊，所以你价格肯定是要涨的啊。这个其实好像老马大道至简，就现在半导体投资的一个逻辑，现在炒的还是比较凶啊。对啊，其实就是现在还是基于一些常理去做推断，可能我这样说吧，就是现在增长 AI 的算力增长肯定不是会奔着每年200%翻倍去的，但是因为现实有瓶颈啊，现实有瓶颈对吧？你像是算力就是储存卡在这个地方，所以导致其实你没有办法去做一个上翻倍的这个增长，就还是卡在每年几十啊，但不代表需求就会需求就会那么弱啊，需求增长其实应该是更高的。其实你从模型的使用的涨价，其实也可以看得出来啊。就假设算力的瓶颈打开了，那么它模型啊和使用方面也会增长，也是会迅速增长的。反正就现在是卡在这个10%几，是因为有现实的瓶颈嘛。如果没有瓶颈的话，它真正的需求确实可能是每年翻倍的增长。我觉得老马说200%，其实也不是不可能啊，也不是很夸张。所以它这个其实有点大道至简了，所以整体 AI 比如说半导体和 AI 相关的板块肯定还是会继续涨价，这个也挺有意思，就整体上来说哈。第6个问题问就是刚才说的100倍的营收的一个补充啊，还有什么时候达成万亿营收，又是再补充一下这个和之前说的差不多啊。 3个板块业务正常增长，还有第3前季度有一个新的 AI 的6.7 billion 的一个合同，然后第3季度和第4季度的话，2个算力租赁爬会结束了，会进入全额付款的状态。所以老马这边提了一下，就说哪怕他们什么事情都不做，年底达成一个100 billion 的一个年化营收啊，就 annual revenue，就是一个1000亿的年化收入，年底是肯定可以达成的啊。这个其实也可以震碎很多人的一个三观了吧？但这个老板是说的非常笃定啊，我觉得也是，其实就是因为主要是算力租赁这个吧，算力租赁这个是有非常确定一个增长性的。星链的服务收入也是有一个比较明确的确定的一个增长性，两个合在一起啊，就是年底到1000亿的一个年化收入肯定是没有问题的，这点我相当同意啊。这个也是比较能够做 headline 的，能做头条标题的。但是说到底，就是今年下半年甚至明年年初的时候，算力租赁可能是收入的一个最明显的一个增长点，甚至可能这个季度啊从有到无，下个季度的话就是对吧再翻了好几个倍，所以这块看上去很明显。但是真正要发力，就是 SpaceX 真正要起飞，肯定是真正的一个起飞点，那么应该就是 V3 版本的星链。这是再怎么说它的重要性都不为过的一个事情。那算力卫星呢，其实就是更加适合就更加远期一点了。算力卫星真正的批量部署肯定不是这2年的事情啊，可能是要2年后。然后算力卫星它的营收要超过星链，我觉得可能是4、5年以后的事情。所以星链肯定是一个主体，而且是接下来的一个非常重要的一个爆发点。V3 星链就是一个质变的东西，就是一个2个数量级变化的一个东西，所以这个东西是真的会起飞的，而且这个东西确定性其实还挺高的。就其实很多之前看衰，就说 SpaceX 评不上估值啊，就它现在这个估值啊，评不上它的一些这种画饼啊，我们就不要去讨论太多什么科幻的东西，就是这个东西，V3 星链啊，就是 V3 星链这个东西，这个是最务实的啊，这是最务实的一个增长点，而且但是这个务实增长点，我们就在讨论2个数量级的增长啊，可能就是5、6年的2个数量级的增长，而且这个东西确定性其实还是比较高的。这个没有什么科幻的，没有什么远期画饼什么的，这个就是很实打实的一个计划，看得到的。这个有多少人把它算在内了？就 V3 星链，这个非常非常重要啊！你就想一下吧，你觉得现在空差配不上现在说什么空差的市盈率90倍对吧？90倍，配不上，那是过个5年左右，它的营收是要增长100倍以上的。这个我觉得是还是比较确定，所以。你们说呢？所以其实这个估值不夸张。然后呢 ，Star Mobile 就是对，就新版的星链的手机智联啊，手机智联业务 Starlink Mobile。那么这个主要涉及到的是它的新购入频谱什么时候开始用。那么之前提到就是说这个，首先说一下这个频谱有哪些优势啊，就是和现在目前实验的和地面运营商合租用的那些频谱来说的话，就是它现在是租用 T-Mobile 还有其他一些地面运营商的一些频谱嘛。那么现在 EchoStar 购入的话，它就是完整的自由频谱了，它可以带来一个100倍的一个服务提升啊。然后呢，而且还是有包含地面的，他们可以去做相应的地面设施，然后形成一个空差自己成为一个完整的运营商，而不是这个通讯服务的一个局部服务提供者吧，这样一个角色。那么他说以后的收入可能会多少？他说没办法，不好估计，也不好说啊，不合适说。但说你可以参考目前的美国的3大运营商每年的收入大概是600 billion 对吧？也就6000亿左右。那么他们肯定是会从中是抠出来一块那个抠出那么一块，但感觉有点挖墙脚的味道。所以说你们自己去掂量吧，就说就是手机智联这块以后能够拿到多少营收。但也给了一个时间表，你说明年开始去部署相关的一个手机质量的卫星，那么明年年底开始提供服务，你就真正开始供应营收啊，就是比较可观的一个营收的话，可能要到28年了，28年。那我们也可以自己算一下，就说600亿是它的一个总的市场去看，对吧？那么他如果想抠掉个，就是他这边可能会想抠的是一个不是6000亿，但可能是想抠1000亿级别的一个市场，1000亿级别就是100个 billion 的话，其实也就相当于它今年年底的一个年化收入，这个算是一个挺显著的一个业务吧。但是你说它是一个质变嘛，我倒也不觉得，因为我现在看的是28年的时候嘛，28年的时候它的一个 就27年年底的时候，空差的年化收入恐怕我们得再看200个 billion 左右了。那么28年可以再增加，再往这个基础上去增加一个100 billion，它是比较显著的，可能会占就28年可能有1/3、1/4的营收可能会跟这个就是 Starlink Mobile 相关啊，也挺多的啊，也挺多的。当然这个估算误差就大了去了，这个误差也是非常扯。我也不觉得它第1年能够拿到100个 billion 的一个营收，可能是要到第2年、第3年。Anyway，这个不容小觑吧，但是也不是一个质变的东西。我觉得真正质变的东西还是那句话，V3星链才是一个质变的东西。Group 营收这边 Group 的训练就是它有问题，就是说你现在的业务上，这个其实非常重要，就是说它的一个接下来的路径 ，AI 发展业务的路径，就是你这么多算力的采购和建设，多少是留给自用去建设 Group 的模型，和多少是去做租赁。这边老马的回答就很有意思了，他说觉得Group 接下来的训练的需求，算力需求可能是呈现一个下降的趋势。呃就是你光看 Group 的模型，可能不好说了，对吧？这个还真不好说。但是这个路径就明确了，就说其实 AI 这块的收入啊，可能算力租赁会成为它的一个收入的主要的一个路径啊，它可能会把90%的算力都出租出去啊，这老马自己说的，老马自己说的，那可能90%的算力都是会去考虑出租。那之后的一个太空算力中心应该也是一个类似的一个比例，所以其实往坏了说，你说他们的自家的模型也许可能不是特别能打的，也许，但是往好的方面去说，就说它现在的 AI 相关的投入和建设，它的回报确定性相对比较高，因为就说你训练自己的模型有多大参数，就得看你的模型有多强了，能不能打，对吧？但是因为现在的算力需求的火热嘛，所以这个你现在投进去的钱，如果你都是到未来是以一个出租的形式去来拿到回报的话，那么就意味着你现在的投入它产出的确定性比较高啊。所以其实这个我觉得从投资角度来讲是一个很好的事情，就是说它现在你看它烧钱烧得非常凶，但是它这个烧钱的回报确定性是比较高的这个其实是让人相对比较安心的一个点当然这里面比较让人不确定性的一点呢是它的算力卫星但这个可能是有比较不大的不确定性。但其实算力卫星的话，可能我们要看3年往后的一个才会成为 AI 这一块业务的一个主体近2年的话，肯定还是以地面的算力为主的。所以其实虽然我们老在说那个太空算力可能讨论的比较多，但其实接下来2年对它的财务影响比较重。其实更加现实的，你应该去讨论就是地面算力才是更加现实的一个东西。那这块的话，它现在也在烧钱烧得很凶嘛，但是如果都是靠出租的话呢，其实它的营收回报其实还是很明确的。觉得 Group 4.5很能打吗？好，对，他财报时候也提嘛 ，Group 4.5刚刚更新其实很多模型刚更新出来的时候，大家都是一个经验为主其实我觉得它到底跟其他的顶流模型相比是一个什么水平，还是得大家多用一段时间，才能好评价2年内组网星链2年内组网星链 V3，不用，它肯定不是2年内完成组网，对吧？每年300次发射，其实但我28年去看了，我觉得明年的新建发射数量也不会多到哪儿去吧。我之前一直对新建的发射数量过于乐观了，我现在看的话，明年可能明年会有2个新的台子投入使用嘛，所以这个是一个比较重要的。然后 V3 可能运营可能也能够来到每个月2发单个发射台，那样的话我们其实可以看的是，就现有的发射台可能明年可以来到20几发。然后新的发射台会慢一些，对吧？新的发射台可能会10左右，我觉得差不多10就差不多了。所以明年我可能看的是新建的发射数量可能是40、50的一个量级吧。后年的话可能会来到100左右的量级。所以你就要完成星链 V3的组网的话，你到完整组网，它肯定是要我们往28年去往28年甚至29年去看嘛，29年去看嘛。29年、30年、我觉得30年其实相对比较显著，V3应该就是一个基本组网过半的一个状态。 但是前期的时候 V3 投入进去应该也是可以有产出的，这个也没有问题，它不是要等，它不是要等组网完成才能够产生营收的嘛，因为它现在它现在 V2 的星链这么1万多颗卫星在上面已经有了，它 V3 和 V2 之间是可以互联的，所以你每次放一个 V3 上去，它都会产生相应的新的营收，这和之前星链最初的情况是不一样的。星链最初的情况是你卫星不够的时候，你就不能够稳定提供服务嘛，所以你要有一个卫星的数量积累之后，你才能算是真正进入正轨。但 V3 不是那么回事儿，它因为有新旧的一个兼容嘛，所以它每一批星链上打上去，它都是能够产生相应的一个营收的，无非就是说它发上去之后调试啊，就是真正入轨啊，调试啊，然后运营可能需要一段时间，尤其 V3 前期的时候，软件可能还有些不一样，所以它前期的效应会相对慢一些。它可能真正要产生效益的话，可能应该是要明年最早可能明年才会产生一个实质的效应啊，但是它并没有一个前期的一个空窗期啊，它应该是一个应该是一个相对比较平稳的增长曲线，也不是平稳嘛，就是一个开头不是没有断档的一个 S 曲线。千亿营收不是，还是说千亿营收不靠 V3 星链啊，就千亿营收说的是今年的事情，今年其实更多是靠的是那个增长，主要靠的是算力租赁嘛。算力租赁到年底的时候，它可能会有一个年化多少？年化可能有400-500亿的400-500亿的年化，可能有400-500亿的一个算力租赁的一个收入嘛。这个是有点凭空冒出来的感觉。然后星链那边的话，其实是算是一个稳步增长，但是星链的收入增速其实是应该在放缓的，从百分比角度来讲的话，对，anyway，我们继续看，我们把它说完。那么下一个问题说的是 Starlink Mobile，又是 Starlink Mobile，它连续2个问题都是问这方面，问地面网络就是可能它的 Capex 资本投入等等之类的一个情况。那么后面提到的就是我觉得比较重点的一点是他们现在新购入频谱是包括地面运营端的，所以他们应该会去做自己的地面网络，然后成为一个完整的一个通讯服务运营商。而且他们的地面的网络建设，像是基站什么的建设方案，他们有很多新的想法，他们并不像传统的运营商一样建那种又大又昂贵又笨重的一个基站，他们可能会做成一种打包的、可移动部署的，或者可以比较灵活部署的小型的很多基站。这个我估计他们之所以能做这种事情，他们应该是把星链当成干网的一部分去考量了。所以他们他们现在也就说 SpaceX 肯定会进军地面的移动网络，这是一个确定的事项，而他们的做法会和传统运营商不一样，这个是大家可以比较关键的 take away 吧，就关键的算是这次财报的一个关键信息要点之一。就这次财报信息量其实真的是挺大的，这个空差财报还是要比特斯拉的财报有意思很多，有很多新的东西。那载人那个说的比较模糊，反正就是需要很多货运任务来证明来验证它的安全性嘛。目标明年年底载人，这个我觉得应该做不到啊。比较明确的是，明年有阿尔特弥斯3任务嘛。但阿尔特弥斯3任务的话，它只做一个轨道对接，只能说是有 HLS， 也就是月球登陆版新建、载人登月版的新建的一个雏形吧。但当时这个对接，当时到时候宇航员是不会进入星舰内部的啊，所以其实这不算是一个星舰载那个明确的一个点嘛。当然，如果它不够安全的话，它也不会愿意让它跟一个载人的飞船去做对接，对吧？有一定的说明性，但不是特别强啊。阿尔特弥斯3，然后28年登月的一个时间表，这个肯定还是要跟官方 NASA 一致，你这个不能乱讲，这个绝对不能乱讲。所以这个其实也不是什么新的信息的。咱这块就是属于那种你不能在财报里面乱讲话的东西。后面2个问题有点没听见，就是他后面几个问题都是快速在讲，就是网上的一些问题。好像是什么的收购问题和Q2明年的一个什么，反正这有2个问题没听见，我们不管了。第12个问题是我觉得比较可以特别一提的，就是也是比较意外的，就是 我们之前我们社区或者我们播客频道的话，我们讨论就是新建项目接下来的问题，其实唯一的问题就是隔热瓦，什么一级回收都不是问题啊。一级回收虽然没有实现，但其实是那个是高度确定的事情，毕竟 V2、V1都已经完成了嘛，而且是可以重复完成，呃，所以 V3完成一级的回收，这个其实压根儿都没有一个。就你就根本就不用去讨论这个事情，是肯定能行的。但是我们就说，唯一质疑的一点就是说，快速复用能不能行？快速复用行不行呢？其实取决于的是隔热瓦的一个问题。那隔热瓦在13飞的表现的话，有好有坏吧，个人觉得，对吧？也就是好的方面就是它的载入非常平稳，基本上看不到火星。坏的方面可能是因为这次 MaxQ 的处理啊，就是节流方面的处理比较粗糙，比较激进吧，所以小的破损很多。但老马自己给人的一个印象非常意外啊，就是说他的意思说他不想说乌鸦嘴，但是他觉得戈尔瓦问题已经解决了。他根据13飞的表现，我不知道他看到了什么我们没有看到的东西啊，但是他下了一个跟我们可能结论很不一样的一个点，他觉得戈尔瓦现在来看已经没有什么想得到的技术障碍，可能还会有新的没有预见到的一个技术障碍冒出来，但是他认为13飞意味着格热瓦已经算是达到一个阶段性的成功了。我不知道他具体是什么意思，也许是说现在新建能够去做简单的快速复用了，但我觉得现在格热瓦能不能耐多次发射，我觉得是质疑的。但也许它改进之后，只要安装方式改进了之后，可以做到不做大修格热瓦，然后复用1、2次。那样的话，对现阶段来说就很够用了。然后之后再去迭代，就说你把新建做成什么不需要大修，然后就可以复用几十次、上百次的一个，那肯定就是它一个远期目标。但是其实短期的话，只要做到格热瓦可能能够快速复用1、2次，哪怕快速复用1次，就算是一个阶段性成功了。也许是这个意思，我不是很确定它是什么意思，但是它的这个说法，它这个表述啊，其实是很有玩味的。就是他说格热瓦问题似乎在13飞意味着格热瓦问题已经算是解决了，说已经 solved problem，但是他想稍微说的保留一点，但他确实用了这样词啊，他觉得已经说 no left，对吧？technically issue left，那就是说，就是格热瓦这块没有技术性问题了。Holy fuck，这个我是没有想到的，也算是最后一个意外点。行，大概就是听一下财报啊，然后这边现场回顾一下，比较散。那么有机会的话，我再去做一个整理啊，或者额外的一个讨论。也许可以再额外录一个视频吧。Anyway，这个就这样吧，对吧？也感谢大家这么一大早的来听这个财报，这个财报还是挺有意思，确实挺有意思。那基本上就这样吧。我晚点的时候可能还是今天吧，今天再整理一下，可能再额外做一个自己的复盘。OK，那么就到这里，感谢大家的收看收听，那么之后见吧，拜拜。